Hey, this is Will. So in this episode, I am going to talk all about the cons of being a digital nomad. And this is one of those things that honestly irritates me quite a bit because I constantly see people just saying how amazing it is to be a digital nomad. It's a dream life and there are no downsides. But honestly, as anything in life, there are definitely quite a few actually downsides, quite a few cons. And at the end of the day, for me, I definitely love being digital nomad, and pros definitely outweigh the cons, but for you it might be different, so it's definitely good to know some of the cons, and it's just good to know what to expect so you can prepare a little bit better. I did make a video of all of the pros of being digital nomad, so make sure to watch that episode or listen to that episode if you haven't yet. And I will try to leave, by the way, all of the useful things that might be useful, might help you to overcome some of these cons. I will leave everything in the description, so check out all of that information. And in general, if you want some good content on digital marketing, productivity, all of those things, then check out some of my other content, all of the links below. And by the way, I'm starting digital nomad community, so again, there's a link down below in the description. Now let's get into it. So the first thing that is a big con being a digital nomad, and I do think this is sort of the main thing for most of the people, and personally for me, this is a big one. It's not having a lot of friends, or well, feeling sort of alone. And you might think, how is this the case if you're constantly in different co-working spaces, meeting different people and so on and so forth. And in the pros episode of being a digital nomad, I did talk about how amazing it is that you get to meet all of the different people and you actually make friends so easy. It's way easier to make friends, I think, as a digital nomad rather than just living a normal life. But the only problem with that is that people come and go, so people constantly rotate, constantly change. So depending again on how exactly you decide to live this digital nomad style, in terms of how often you plan to move and what kind of friends you find, you might end up with people that come and go every month or 2 months. So you make a friend and then 2 months later that friend leaves and then you need to make a new friend, and so on and so forth. So sometimes you do end up staying in one place for a little bit longer if you just find some really good community, really good group of friends. And I'm not saying that you will never see those people again. Actually, once you start creating this sort of international friend circle, whatever you want to call it, you're actually going to start running into people in all of the different destinations, especially if you're going to the hot sort of hubs of digital nomads. So whenever I go to, let's say, Bali, you constantly have people coming back to Bali. So some of the people that perhaps you met a couple years ago, now you're going to meet them in Bali. And definitely whenever I go to a new destination, I meet someone who's there that I already know from a different place, and they're there at the same time and we happen to meet up. But yeah, not having that friendship that is very long lasting and you're constantly with that group of friends, that is definitely a big downside. And especially if you go to some place that is not, let's say, a huge nomad sort of hub, and you need to basically start at the beginning, you need to start making all of the new friends. It honestly does get a little bit tiring. I remember one period where I basically was, when I would meet someone, if they tell me that they're not at this destination, whatever the place I am at, they're there less than 2 weeks, then it doesn't really matter how cool they are and how well we click. I remember feeling that I can't just really honestly invest my time, because we're not going to be able to really build out that good relationship if you're here only for 2 weeks and that is it. Another thing that I have been sort of, I think, feeling a little bit more and more is not really owning any things. So it is also very freeing at the same time. And again, I talked about this in the other episode. Being this sort of minimalist and living from your bag can be very, very freeing and make life very simple. I pack my bags within 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and I can live in a different country. It really makes life so much easier. But at the same time, whenever I go to new destinations, there are some of these little things. I don't know whether it's just me or not, but I love having a good coffee machine. And yes, I always go to coffee shops and all of that, but it's just nice to wake up and have a good cup of coffee. And some of, let's say, the Airbnb's apartments that you rent, they might have that, but some of them they might not. And sometimes, just simple things like that, just having coffee machine, having a good blender, having whatever it is, a good oven or whatever, like these kind of basic things. Or for example, I travel now with projector, but also I'm kind of considering if I should leave it because it takes up quite a bit of space and it weighs quite a bit. But that's a nice thing if I want to watch movies on a massive screen, because some of the places that I live at, some they have really nice TVs, but some they have quite small TVs. So there are some of these things that you have in your house if you live there, and you are not going to be able to have them if you are a digital nomad, or you will have them, you will maybe move to a place. I have done this quite a few times where I move to a place and I buy all of those things that I know is just going to make my life easier. But then again, I feel like that's, well, first of all, it's additional money to buy all of these goods, and after that, I also feel like it's a little bit wasteful, because at the end of the day, you're going, even if you decide to, let's say, stay somewhere for 6 months, you're going to use these things quite a bit, but after that, you either need to sell them or give them away to someone, and they might not really use it, so it is a little bit wasteful. Also, on that kind of same topic, again, it depends if you like to cook or not, but another example, if you do travel quite often, for example, I love cooking and I love having a ton of different spices and different ingredients and all of those kind of things. But sometimes if, let's say right now, I'm in a place for 2 weeks, so honestly, I'm not going to be bothered to go and buy all of the spices and ingredients. I'm just going to eat out for the 2 weeks and that is it. And that is honestly quite irritating. Another con, kind of also a little bit related to the previous point, is that staying fit is a little bit harder. So again, depending on how many times you move, how often you move, and all of those kind of things, if let's say you go to some places and you only stay for let's say a week, 2 weeks, then you need to find the gym membership, and most of the time they're not going to have a short membership, or well, you might just end up paying more money getting like a monthly membership even if you're there for just a week or two, which is what I'm doing right now. And some of the times, if you're going to do more traveling in general, I think, even if you have like this little base for a month, you're going to maybe travel around, and some of the places they are not going to have a gym. Also, just moving from one place to other place, that takes travel time, and sometimes you spend the whole day traveling. So I definitely noticed from my own experience that it is much harder to actually go to the gym and stay fit. And also, kind of why I said that this is related to the previous point, you don't have all of the utilities for you to eat clean and eat good food, cook good food. So it might be harder for you to keep good diet. You also want to try out all of the amazing local foods, especially if you're not there for a long time. And a lot of amazing foods, they're not the healthiest foods. So again, all of this, it just makes it so much harder. There are obviously some pros as well. If you go to some places, again, this all depends on your budget and all of those kind of things, but some of the places, for example, they're very cheap. So sometimes I just get a cook that cooks clean food for me, And something like that, let's say in Southeast Asia, is super affordable, whereas let's say if you are in the US, for example, or some European countries, that can be very expensive. Another big con is that self-discipline is, I would say, much harder as a digital nomad, and that honestly is because the life as a digital nomad is way more exciting. You constantly come to new places, new experiences, new foods to try, new people to meet, so on and so forth. And it's very hard for yourself to actually, have the power of will to not do all of those exciting things right away and to concentrate and do your work. And if even if you have your own business, but if you're based in one place, it's way easier when you have that routine. On the other side, obviously, it's way more boring when you just have that routine and that is it. And really, if you figure out your things, how to do it properly, you can have both. You can have that somewhat routine and then enjoy the new experiences, but it's definitely going to be harder, I'm not going to lie. And also kind of related to this point, and something that not that many people talk about, but it requires quite a bit of time, like additional time, to be a digital nomad. So what I mean by this is that whenever you move to a new place, it honestly takes all of these small things that you might not think about, aside from traveling, aside from packing your things, packing your bags, and then traveling, which might take you a day, let's say. Aside from that, once you arrive to a new place, you need to find accommodation, which takes a long time to do. Well, depending how you do it and how much you care about it, it can take quite a bit of time. But even the small things, even let's say figuring out, for example, now I was figuring out what gym I want to go to and which is the closest gym, which gym has the right equipment for me. That takes quite a bit of time. And then figuring out, okay, what's a good supermarket to go, just these basic things. What is the best SIM card to get for this country? What is the best supermarket that has this and this food? What are some of the nice cafes that I can go and work from? If let's say you need some medical procedures, what are the best hospitals I can go to, and so on and so forth. So these might seem like some of these small things, but believe me, all of these small things do add up quite a bit and require quite a bit of time. And this is something that I don't see everyone talking about, but it definitely, I would say, is a big part. Also, one con that not everyone considers. So most of the time, when you are a digital nomad, usually I would say, well, depending again on your situation, but usually you're going to go from a place where you live from, let's say, more costly place to a cheaper place. So most of the things are going to be cheaper, but at the same time, it depends how exactly you live, because let's say in whatever, let's say your home country where you're coming from, if let's say you're getting a lease, for example, for 1 year, it's going to be pretty cheap for you to, let's say, pay per month. Like the costs are going to drop quite a bit. If let's say you get a gym membership that is 1 year as well, the costs drop obviously quite a bit. If you are a digital nomad and you're doing these things, if let's say you're getting Airbnb and you're paying per night or you're paying per week, those can be quite a bit more expensive. And if again you're paying for a gym, for example, now I'm only using a gym for 2 weeks, even less, week and a half, and I'm paying a monthly price. You also on top of that have all of the traveling expenses, like the different tickets, and now you have all the PCR tests, and then you're taking all of the taxis and so on and so forth. And you also don't, when you arrive first, you don't quite know all of the good places, and sometimes you don't know where to buy things, or good restaurants, good cheap and good quality restaurants, and all of those kind of things. So again, it all really depends on how often you're going to move to new places and where you're coming from and where you're going. But honestly, don't always just imagine that, oh, it's going to be dirt cheap for me to go to these places and that is it. No, sometimes actually, if you're going to be moving a lot, those costs can actually add up quite a bit. In general, though, most of the places that are digital nomad hubs, they are definitely much cheaper. So even if you're doing this kind of lifestyle where you're constantly moving, it's still probably going to be cheaper, but this is just something that I want you to think about. So another thing is relationships and dating, and this is kind of related, I guess, to making friends and all of that, but maybe even a little bit harder, I would say, because imagine if you come to a place and you're staying there for a month or you're staying there for 2 months. You can make a good friend, and then later on in life, you can meet with that friend at a different destination. But if, let's say, you meet someone, especially if you're meeting someone who's not a digital nomad as well, someone who's a local, then okay, you start dating and you really like the person, and maybe you're there for a month, and after that month, what are your options? If the person has a job there, then it's either you stay there for longer or they have to quit their job and that is it. Even if the person is, let's say, another digital nomad and you have the possibility to travel together to new destinations, that sometimes might be a little bit tricky as well, because imagine meeting someone and starting to date someone, and then just a couple of weeks in, a month in, you want to go to a new destination, and then you are asking this person, hey, do you want to come to this new destination with me as well? Yes, we've been on maybe 5 dates. So it's almost like asking someone to move in after 5 dates. It's rushing things a little bit too much. So that can be a little bit strange situation to be in. And sometimes based on visas as well, you might need to leave. You might not even have an option to stay longer and develop that relationship more. Sometimes you might just meet someone that's amazing and then your visa is expiring, so you need to leave a country. So it definitely becomes a lot more tricky. And in some situations, I know that people even, they do this thing where they meet someone and, you know, they really click and they go to a different destination, and it's kind of, sometimes it's, you know, it can be even sort of convenient. It's very nice to travel with someone when you live this lifestyle, because if you go to places where you don't know anyone and maybe there's very little digital nomad community, you always have this other person that you can have fun with, and you know, it doesn't really matter if you don't know anyone else. And sometimes even if you, I know some cases where some people did this where they honestly didn't want to be in those relationships anymore, but they ended up being in those relationships just because they were in these places, they were just going in these destinations. But once, you know, once that stopped, once they were out of there, they just quit those relationships. So it definitely can be very tricky being a digital nomad and actually dating and doing all that kind of stuff. Okay, another thing, and this might be personally just me, I don't know, let me know in the comments, but one downside, and this might sound very silly for you, but after doing this digital nomad life for quite a while, I realized that after seeing a bunch of really cool things, whenever I go to a destination where, you know, I've already been, and the normal things basically just look sort of boring. A lot of things, because you've seen some amazing destinations, you've done some amazing experiences. So a lot of times when I meet my friends, or sometimes even with my family, I actually feel even really guilty when my parents are like, hey, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And I'm like, okay, I don't know if I want to go kayaking in this boring river, if, you know, I've been kayaking in Vietnam in Halong Bay with one of the world wonders, like absolutely stunning place. After that, kayaking anywhere else in the world is going to be boring for me. Let's be honest. And this is sort of the thing, after you have all of those experiences, and I mean, it's amazing to have those experiences, but do keep in mind that everything else after that is going to seem kind of boring. Okay, I don't know if this last point was a little bit too much. I might have, went in a little bit too far, but do let me know if you have any other questions, or these are sort of just a few things that come to my mind. Again, didn't quite plan out this episode, just talking off the cuff, so I might have missed some things out. If you have any questions, or if you have any other cons, then definitely leave them in the comments. If you're listening to this as a podcast, take the title, put it on YouTube, find the video, and leave your comments in the comment section. Again, as I said, I'm going to leave some useful information, useful links, so check out the description. Also, if you want some very useful content for digital marketing, productivity, all of that, make sure to check out all of my other content. And I'm starting out Digital Nomad community, so make sure to check that out. So again, you don't do this whole experience all by yourself. You have friends wherever you are going to. If you found this useful, make sure to smash the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, put on those notifications, stay awesome, and I'll see you soon.